Welcome to this deep inner exploration. Today, we aren't doing a history lesson. No, we're looking into a therapeutic mirror. Inspired by the deep psychology of Carl Jung, ancient mysticism, and the shadow work guided by the vision of Urvasi Claudia Alagna, we're going to explore the 12 inner plagues. We're going to understand how these hidden forces, these unhealed wounds and unconscious automatic responses actually govern our lives from the shadows. Now, just to be clear, this isn't some dogmatic religious teaching. It's a symbolic, deeply emotional journey to help you look at your own life from the inside out.
Okay, let's dive into this. To start, we really need to completely flip our traditional understanding of what a plague actually is. You know, when life is desperately trying to wake us up, but a part of us just stubbornly resists change, that's when inner plagues appear. As you can see from this quote, they absolutely are not divine punishments or just bad luck. They are the urgent, visible manifestations of an unconscious internal state that is finally demanding our attention. It's basically what happens when the things we've denied or hidden turn into a symptom that literally screams at us in our everyday life.
Now, to truly understand these blocks, we have to redefine where they're even happening. In this psychological reading, Egypt is not a dot on a historical map. Egypt represents the state of our soul when it's living trapped, submissive, hardened, and profoundly disconnected from itself. It's that heavy feeling of just going through the motions on the outside, living on autopilot, while your true life on the inside has basically stalled out. This is step one of shadow work, recognizing when we are living in our own internal Egypt.
So what exactly is an inner plague then? Well, it's an unconscious program. It's a defensive structure that takes over the chessboard of our mind when our awareness is completely checked out. The absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is that we don't suffer these plagues by force. They rule us because we unconsciously hand over the controls. You see, a lot of people don't even recognize their plagues because they confuse them with their personality. They'll say, well, I'm just like this, or that's just my character, when actually they're obeying an ancient wound and defending a really vulnerable spot. They'll say, it's just my destiny, when in reality, they're just endlessly repeating a story they haven't understood yet.
All right, section 1, the defenses and the overflow. Let's look at how our minds initially resist reality.
Here we have the first 4 inner plagues, and they represent our most basic psychological blocks. First up is denial, symbolized by water turning to blood. It's the paralyzing fear that drains your life force. You know a relationship or situation hurts, but you look the other way. Fear freezes you, keeping you in pure survival mode. The second is emotional invasion, or the flood of frogs. This is the heavy guilt tying you to the past. It's unprocessed emotion literally flooding your internal house because you feel so much, but you don't have a healthy vessel to hold it. Third is constant irritation, the swarm of insects. Think of this as deep shame and resentment that keeps you distracted with tiny, petty battles just so you don't have to look at the real wound. And the fourth is confusion, the blinding cloud of flies. That's the mind constantly doubting, desperately seeking external approval, and constantly adapting just to be liked, all to avoid making a true decision of your own.
Moving on to section 2, the body and the shadow. This covers plagues 5 through 8.
Now, these next plagues, they exact a very heavy toll. The 5th plague is the loss of vital force. Essentially, this is a profound disconnection from your own body. Your instinctive energy just dies off because you've handed it over to the inner pharaohs of extreme self-demand, totally losing touch with your intuition. The 6th is the suppurating wound. This is unconscious repetition. It's going back to the exact same pains and scenarios over and over because the trauma you haven't spoken about is now screaming through your physical body. 7th is destructive hardness, represented by cold hail. This is your survival character. It's the mask of the strong one, the people pleaser, or the lone wolf who needs no one, but who ultimately just freezes out love. And finally, the 8th plague is voracity. Like a swarm of devouring locusts, this is our contained rage. It's the unexpressed anger and an insatiable hunger to fill a void by devouring experiences that honestly never actually nourish the soul.
Section 3, the exile of the soul. Let's look at plagues 9 and 10.
The 9th plague is thick darkness. And we're not talking about a beautiful mystical night here. This is a state of emotional dependence so deep that your soul has separated from its own inner light. You end up confusing unhealthy attachment with destiny, completely unable to imagine a future without that other person or thing. And this naturally leads to the 10th plague, the death of the inner air. Symbolically, this is absolute rigidity. It's the total inability to change or let go, resulting in the loss of your internal project and your true vocation. It really shows the devastating price of staying enslaved in your internal Egypt.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the 11th plague, false identity, and the self-sabotage that comes with it. Look at this contrast here. On one side, we have the character, that survival mask that kept you safe when you were a kid. On the other side, we have the soul, your authentic self. The thing is, our survival character flat out refuses to leave the board because we are absolutely terrified of the emptiness. We're terrified of who we might be without our chains. So what do? We self-sabotage. We get so close to growing, prospering, or loving freely, and then we just destroy it, purely out of fear of stepping outside our known identity.
And that brings us to the 12th, and honestly the most profound inner plague, the fear of freedom. This is the ultimate exile of the soul. You know, so many of us say we want to be free, but when the cage door finally swings open, we paralyze. We choose to step backward into a familiar prison because true freedom is intimidating. Why? Because if you're free, you can no longer blame your past, your circumstances, or your wounds. True freedom requires the beautiful, undeniable, and heavy responsibility of actually incarnating your soul into action.
Let's move to section 4, the map of your freedom, and see how this all builds toward true integration.
In deep mysticism, there's this beautiful concept called the sephira. It's a specific part of the soul that is actively asking to be repaired through your symptoms. So I want you to ask yourself, with profound compassion, where are you denying? Because that denial is practically begging you for truth. Where are you emotionally flooded? That invasion is asking you to build a healthy internal vessel. Your irritation? It's demanding an internal cleansing of old resentments. Confusion is crying out for discernment. That loss of vitality is a desperate plea for energy recovery. You have to stop bleeding your power. And that suppurating wound, it's asking for the word. It's asking you to finally speak the pain so it can begin to heal.
And this brilliantly illustrates the path for the deeper plagues. If you're suffering from destructive hardness, the cure isn't to suddenly become weak. It's learning to set boundaries with your heart. Veracity requires measure, learning how to truly receive and absorb, rather than just mindlessly consuming. If you're lost in that thick darkness, the antidote is lighting a concrete lamp, just one small daily active presence. The death of the air asks you to recover your vocation. That false identity, it demands disidentification, taking off the mask with love. And that fear of freedom, that one asks for spiritual responsibility. It's asking you to finally take charge of your own life.
To wrap up this deep explainer, I want to leave you with this. These plagues stop being some ancient story the very second we recognize them as our own internal mirrors. The journey out of your internal Egypt is not a physical relocation. It's an awakening of consciousness. So I invite you to look inward, identify the block that is governing your chessboard today, and ask yourself this one provocative question. Where am I afraid to be free? Because true freedom is and always will be a conscious choice.